how do we calculate child support in Colorado? Whether you have a divorce with a minor child or you have a custody case, so you have two unmarried parents who have a minor child together whose relationship has dissolved, you'll most likely have a discussion about child support. Now, it's not to say that it's always exchanged in every single case by default, but it will at least come up to run through the factors that we consider and generally do a calculation. So before we get into the factors, I want to make sure that it's very clear what child support actually is. So it's really important to remember that child support is the right of the child. So in another way you can think about that is it's the child's money. So even though it gets exchanged between the parents, it's really the child's money. And so that's really important to remember, especially if your co-parent or your ex-spouse is not your favorite person at the moment, which I can understand. So it may be a little bit hard to kind of hand over that cash or check or send them money that's called child support. But you really have to remember that that money is your kid. And because the kid's a minor, we have to give it to an adult, which tends to be the other parent. So child support is going to be the right of the child. So how do we figure out what it is if there's anything that needs to be paid? So we look at a number of different things. First, we're going to look at what the parenting time schedule is between the parents. So Colorado has chosen to draw a line in the sand with overnights. So each parent, we add up how many overnights in a given year that they have, and we plug that into the calculation. The next thing we look at is gross monthly income of each parent. So this is going to be what is earned before anything gets taken out, including taxes, basic utilities, groceries, rent, anything like that. It's just the initial number that you earn, and it's going to be on a monthly basis. So a real easy way to figure that out is if you get paid by the hour, let's say you get 20 bucks an hour, you would do $20 an hour times 40 hours a week, which is going to be a full-time job, times 52 weeks a year, which is a full year, divided by 12. That's going to give you per month. Now, if you're saying, well, I don't work 40 hours a week, or maybe you work more than 40 hours a week, 40 hours a week is going to be the full time that, unless you have a good reason for it, like you're in school or there's something else going on, most of the time, even if you work 32 hours a week, the court is going to use the 40-hour-a-week threshold to figure out child support. So just keep that in mind. Next, we're going to look at expenses for the kids. Now, these are not all of the expenses because we know kids are expensive, right? These are specific expenses, and they're generally going to be the health insurance premium, and that's the kids portion. So if you've got a family plan and it's you and your child on it, you need to figure out how much is your child's portion. And for that, you'll probably have to talk to your insurance company and get some documentation on it. So it's going to be the child's portion of health insurance premiums per month. And then also if you have something like daycare. So if you work and your kiddo needs to have childcare, what are you paying per month in daycare? There are a couple other expenses that could be considered if there's sort of ongoing long-term health issues, but those are going to be specific to each case, and you'll want to identify those if they are appropriate in your case. So we're going to take all of that information and it's plugged into a calculator that then provides a calculation for child support. That calculation and how that equation works has been figured out by our legislator, and so there's not a lot of wiggle room, and it also means you don't have to do math, which for me is fantastic. So once we get that initial number, there certainly can be some discussion of whether that should be lessened or maybe increased. But for the most part, if all the numbers are plugged in and everything is appropriate, generally that's going to be the amount of child support that's probably going to be owed. So keep that in mind when you're running through that calculation. You can get the calculator off the Colorado Court's website. You can plug in the numbers and you can see what comes out. If you are someone who has an existing support order, so you have another order from a court about another minor child, that can also be taken into consideration. It's not going to cut your child support order in half. It's not going to reduce it, but certainly the courts don't want someone to be overly burdened with child support obligations. So that's something you may consider as well if that's appropriate in your situation. So once we get the number, we know the child support amount, it's generally paid per month. And an order is put in place from the courts. If the parties agree, the money can be voluntarily exchanged. So the paying parent can voluntarily send it to the recipient parent. If the parents don't agree, then generally the courts by law are required to do an income assignment. So that's a garnishment. That means it gets taken right out of the paycheck of the paying parents. So that's sort of how it's actually paid once you figure out the amount. The thing to remember about child support in Colorado as well is that it can be modified at any time, so long as the monthly amount would have at least a 10% change. So if you're can't go into court over, well, it could be $5 cheaper. If your award is anything more than $50, that's not gonna fly. But if it would be $30 cheaper if it was $50, or if it was $500 and it would be $100 more because of things that have changed, either the parenting schedule or incomes or the expenses for kiddos, you can certainly apply to have a modification of child support, and the same calculation is run. We use the same exact factors. We look at the situation as it is at that point, and then we rerun child support. So it's a pretty simple process once you have the numbers in place. And again, you can find the calculator on the court's website and sort of run that calculation yourself and figure out what child support may or may not be. It may be a case in your situation that it's not exchanged at all, which is sometimes what happens, but at least you can run through and know where you stand kind of given the facts in your case.